Arma verum que conum Troy que primus oporus Italium fato Portugus Liveniaci venit littora. I sing of arms and of the man who first came from the coasts of Troy to Italy and the Lavinian shores, exiled by fate. Much was he tossed about upon the land and on the sea by supernal powers, because of cruel Juno's sleepless wrath. Many things he also suffered in war, till he built a city, brought his gods into Latium, from which came the Latin race, the Alban sires, and the walls of lofty Rome. O Muse, tell the causes. For what affront and why incense the Queen of Gods compelled a hero renowned for his piety to undergo such sufferings and such toils? Is there such anger in celestial minds? There was an ancient city, Carthage, held by Tyrian colonists, facing from afar Italia and the distant Tiber's mouth, rich in resources, fierce in war's pursuits, and this one city, Juno, it was said, esteemed far more than every other land, Samos itself being less. Here were her arms, her chariot here. Even still, the goddess strives in earnest hope to one day found a kingdom here, of universal sway, should the fates permit. But of a race derived from Trojan blood she had heard, who would overturn the Tyrian towers one day, and a people of wide rule, proud in war, descended from them, who would come for Libya's doom. So did the fates decree. Fearing this and mindful of the former war she had led at Troy for her beloved Greeks, because of her ire and cruel griefs, Saturnia had not forgot, but still remembered, hoarded in her deepest thought, the judgment given by Paris and the affront of beauty scorned, the hated Trojan race and the honors granted to snatched Ganymede. Inflamed by these, she drove far from Latium the Trojan remnant that escaped the Greeks and fierce Achilles. For many years they wandered. Driven by fate, round all the seas. Such task it was to found the Roman state. Scarcely out of sight of Sicily, they spread their sails with joyous hearts, and with brazen prows were plunging through the foam. When Juno, eternal wound still fresh within her breast, thus with herself communed. Shall I, who have begun, desist nor overcome, and avert this Trojan king? The fate's forbidden deed. Shall Pallas burn the fleet of the Greeks and drown them in the sea, all for the furious lust of one, Ajax, Oileus' son? She who from the clouds snatched the swift fire of Jove and hurled it, smote the ships and scattered them, and upturned all the sea with wind. And he, by whirlwind seized, breathing flame from his transfixed breast, upon a sharp rock impaled. But I, who move as queen of the gods, Jove's sister and his spouse, for so many years, with one sole race, rage war, and who henceforth will worship the power of Juno, and supplant at her altars Leah's gifts. Revolving such things in her flaming heart, she came to Aeolia, region of the clouds, places that teemed with furious south winds. Here in a vast cavern, King Aeolus holds his empire over the struggling winds and sounding storms, and binds them fast in chains. They, chafing, the great mountain murmurs roar around their cloisters. On his lofty seat sits Aeolus, with scepter. Both their wrath assuages, their fury moderates, else they would bear away with rapid force sea, earth, and heaven, sweeping through the air. But the omnipotent Father, fearing this, hid them in gloomy caves, and set upon them the mass of lofty mountains, and gave them a king who, by compact sure, might know when to restrain and when to loose the reins. To him then suppliant Juno spoke these words: O Aeolus, I know that unto you the Father of the gods and King of men grants to assuage and lift the waves with winds. A race now sails on the Tyrrhene sea hostile to me, transporting Ilium to Italy and their conquered household gods. Strike force into your winds and sink their ships, or drive them wide asunder, and the waves strew with their corpses. Twice 7 nymphs are mine, the fairest, Diopeia, will I give to you to be your own, in wedlock firm, and for such service to pass her years with you, and make you the father of a lovely race. Aeolus answered, Yours, O Queen, whatever you choose me to require, it's mine to obey. You grant me whatever sovereignty I hold, my scepter in the favor of Jove, and to recline at the banquets of the gods, and all the power I hold over clouds and storms. It's only 7 minutes. Not that long. An interesting performance. Now you might be wondering why I just gave that in my underwear out here in this valley with this wind and the thunder in the atmosphere. And, I just felt the necessity to do such a thing. There is a squall of rain which is headed exactly in my direction. So once that starts to pelt me, I might cut this thing off. But for now, this is an advertisement, let's say, that I have not been paid for yet. And if I do at some point get paid, a disclaimer will appear on the screen below. Though that would take some serious effort for someone to find this, post it on the internet, and then monetize it in some way by perhaps pretending to be me. But I'm not saying that it's not outside the realm of possibility that some such might happen. Regardless, the advertisement is for this microphone that I'm holding, which, if I am getting paid for this, then a link will appear below. But I wanted to show off the capabilities of this microphone and that camera, and that type of equipment will be listed in the description of this video, so some money can exchange hands. Because there are those who must do such things for good and bad and evil and fantastic and spectacular reasons and so on and so forth. But anyways, it is rather windy, and I'm hoping it captures some of the atmosphere. I just have this little bit of a fluff on the top of it, which came with the piece of equipment. And I'm holding it relatively close to me, although I could attach it here if I wanted. Although you could see probably a bit of a dip in the volume there. And I don't know who's going to take this and whether or not they'll spend much time fiddling with the audio to try and make it sound real good, but I'm not an audio person myself, so I don't dabble too much into that. Perhaps maybe someone could take care of that sort of thing in the future for whoever's attempting to monetize and so on and so forth. You get the idea. It's a thing. It's annoying. And it just must be paid mention to every now and again. Well, before the rain really starts to come down, I want to talk about why I'm in underwear. And then maybe what I just recited, some of the significance that it held to me today. But I was thinking about the great general, the most famous general to first set foot on these plains. Again, and reading through some of his works, though I should be spending more time on that, and I will. And I will be delivering a bit of information about what I gleaned from his passages as I work my way again through his writings. And I might even deliver some of them verbatim, maybe even in a section, perhaps, as a 7.5 minute performance as you just received from the high poet, that is Publius Virgilius Maro. But I'll give you the quick story first, and that's the one about the underwear. So I've been writing a piece of literature, a scene basically, 3 scenes. And the first scene is guys riding an e-bike on a pretty desolate Montana Valley road. And he's riding, and the sounds are getting louder. The wind's kicking. The noise of the bike is getting louder in his ear, and it's just focusing on that. Zzz, louder and louder and louder. And then all of a sudden, he just hits the brakes, skids the tires, comes to a stop, and sees a pair of shorts on the ground. And that pair of shorts on the ground he looks at, and they're dusty and nasty. And he dusts them off, and he puts them in his bag and keeps going. Second scene, same thing, a little bit quicker, riding down a desolate road on an e-bike. But then there's a counter to the rider, and that's a guy driving in a big 4x4 truck. And his sound's getting louder and louder yet. And they pass each other. But the e-bike rider is wearing the shorts. And so he stops to say hi to this gentleman, because people actually stop on this road for each other to see what's what, especially if somebody's moving at a slower pace than a car. And the guy rolls his window down and he says, "Are those my shorts?" And the e-bike rider says, "Oh, these are yours? Well, here you go. Have them. Take them back." He just drops his pants, drops his shorts down to his underwear, and he goes, "Here's. I found these a few days back on the road here. Now, I can understand maybe if you didn't want them back, seeing as you just saw me wearing them. But I promise I washed them every time I wore them, which is to say more than once since I found them. But they have been washed just about every time I wore them." And the guy says, he pauses for a second, and he goes, "Yeah, they must have fallen out of my truck or something. I made a little bit back, but yeah, I noticed them, and I said, hey, I got shorts that I lost just like that. I was wondering." My head went, well, hey, wait a second. Those shorts are catchy to the eye. I just noticed them, and I thought I'd ask. So, well, yeah, they're certainly yours. If you were missing a pair and you think they might have fell out of your truck, then yeah, these are definitely yours here. But I can't understand if maybe you didn't want them back because, as I said, I didn't know who they belonged to when I found them. I washed them, and then I said, I'll wear them until maybe somebody catches my eye and wants them back. Because what am I going to do? Stick them on my shoulder like a hobo with a flag bag or whatever they call them, and tote it around until somebody says, hey, those are my shorts. Hey, here you go. Well, this is me wearing them as a flag. They just happen to be a flag that's affixed quite tightly to my junk. Is that a problem? Do you really want them back? They have been close to the family jewels. And he goes, you can keep them And he's like, really? You want me to keep them? Because now I feel like we're in a relationship where both of our junk have been up against these shorts. Now I feel like you and I have some sort of bond, and I don't quite know where to place it, because who wants this pair of shorts now? I mean, they've been close to you, and more recently they've been close to me. So I don't really know what the situation is, but perhaps perhaps nobody should wear them. He goes, no, you have them. Yeah, it's fine. I got plenty of shorts. I don't need another pair of shorts. They just caught my eye. That's all. But I'm happy. You found them. Hey, finders keepers. They're all yours. I apologize. It's not a big deal. I think they belong in your possession. And anybody goes, oh, great. All right. Well, I mean, that's cool. I got plenty of shorts too. So, but I'll hang on to them, I guess. He goes, all right, yeah, well, anyways, yeah, all right, take care, and drives off. Closes his window, and he's kind of weirded out by the thing. Guy in the e-bike's like, that was weird. Jumps on his e-bike, puts the shorts back on, jumps on his e-bike, and drives away. Third scene, coming together again. Bike noises, rising and rising. Big rig noises, rising and rising. Driving towards each other. Biker driving to the right. Big rig driver driving to the left. Increasing the noise. Increasing the atmosphere. Louder and louder noises. They see each other again. And they stop. And bike rider says, hey, I'm wearing the shorts again. The guy goes, I see that. The bike rider says, I hope you don't mind. I hope this isn't like flaunting an ex-girlfriend out in public, because she's with me now. But that's kind of what it feels like. The guy goes, no. It's kind of funny. I think it's kind of funny. And he goes, all right, good. The guy goes, my wife, though, she asked about the shorts. Oh, your wife asked about them? She says, yeah, because I blamed her. She maybe lost them in the wash somewhere, something like that. And she said, maybe they fell out of your truck. And I said, well, maybe they did. I go, actually, I know for a fact they did. And she goes, what? How do you know that? And I told her about you. You told her about me. Did you say that I stole them? How did you put the conversation that we had to her? He goes, I tried to explain it, and, well, she didn't seem to understand, and I kept telling her, that it was like a relationship, and it was kind of weird, and we didn't really know. And, well, she left me wondering, last time we met, were you hitting on me? And the e-bike rider goes, what? No. Are you hitting on me? Guy in the big rig goes, no. And they both go, man. E-bike rider goes, man. Trying to get somebody's shorts back to him is hard work. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Leave him on the road? I goes, no, makes sense. I mean, maybe donate them to a thing, maybe. He goes, yeah, but they're a pair of shorts. They fit. I mean, if it's the same if I donated them and then bought them. He goes, yeah, I guess it is. I go, I mean, I just formed a relationship with you. I didn't mean to, but here we are. He goes, yeah, I guess so. Well, my wife, she'd like to invite you over for dinner. The bike rider goes, huh? Wait a second, you are hitting on me. He goes, oh, bigger guys go, no. She just, she saw the same that we are. We formed a relationship through a pair of shorts, and she thought it might be nice to invite you over for dinner. and I don't get to know you, and then maybe we can all formulate a relationship together. You, me, the shorts, my wife. E-bike rider goes, yeah, all right. When do you want to have me over? He goes, well, my wife thinks this Friday'd be good. E-bike rider goes, all right. Man, these shorts. You sure you didn't get them somewhere else? Because these shorts get around. That's the best ending I have for it, which isn't much of an ending at all. It's meant to be funny. Some of the delivery is a little bit different as I was writing it down. Kind of a weird scene as I put the shorts back on. How much of that actually happened? How much of that has yet to happen? I'm impressed that this camera has not fallen over yet on the miniature tripod that it is on. And that rain actually looks like it's going to push to the east of me. No, I'm starting to get a bit of it. It's going to hit. It's going to hit. I might be fleeing into the distant future. That was just a bit of a jokey kind of one. Now, the performance and the serious stuff maybe that I wanted to talk about was that discussion earlier, the recital that I gave about. Now, why did I write that story though? Let's discuss that story that I just wrote down. Because it's these shorts that ended up on the road, and I thought about kind of the funny nature of basically it being two guys who end up with the same woman, and the woman is represented by a pair of basketball shorts or whatever. Basically some shorts that get around. You know, they're close up against the junk of another man. How do you deal with that? You know, it's all right if you wash them in between nearly every time, that kind of thing. But for a woman, what kind of a washing needs to take place for her to cleanse herself from one man to the next? Imagine the washing. Oh, no. Maybe I pissed somebody off with that phrase. And with that, the water is starting to come down on me. And I'm going to recenter this. And I'm going to show you the storm I'm looking at come in my direction. And maybe I did piss someone off. I'm going to put it on top of this post because this post is a little bit sturdier. We even got some face track enabled. That'll probably follow me around. Might even try that for the rest of this. I just don't, wider base, that's probably all right. So, now, a woman who goes from one to a next. Now, what is the story that I was talking about? I was talking about the great work by the great poet Virgil, the Aeneid. Those are the opening lines of the Aeneid translated into English. The original is in Latin, which is why I began with Arma verumque cano, Troy te primus oporus Italium, fato perfugus, Laviniaci, veni litora. And what that describes is the first two most important aspects of the story, and then the geographic location that goes on from there. And there's a lot of topics. I could spend hours just talking about the lines. But I'll skip ahead a little bit and talk about the nature of woman. Because the two central themes essentially are arms, which means like warlike capability. Whether that's technology or actual arms, or the arm that holds the sword, the arm that holds the shield. Arms, armament, the right to bear arms. Arms and man. Arma virumque cano. Cano. Twist a cane. Hey, a twist a cane. Yeah, it drives my brain. Yeah. Twist a cane. That's a biblical name, I believe, Cain, but it's the same root as cano in Latin, or canine, like a dog. There's a good metal song where the guy just rips into a crazy bit where he goes, I am not a man. I am just a dog. And throws all sorts of stink into it. Man, the winds are kicking. Oh, I lost you again. This piece of equipment is taking a beating. Try it like that, maybe. That's a little better. Maybe tilt it a little bit. It's just picking up some draft from this windy valley as the rain's increasing its abilities. Only heard a bit of thunder earlier and nothing from this section. Most of it's past and was to the north. But talking about men, and the counterpoint to the heroic man of the story, the hero is Aeneas. He is the last and most royal remnant of the Trojan diaspora, fleeing with their household gods from the fall of Troy. And the end of the story should come as no surprise, but that hero and his lineage would go on to be the seeds which would form the centrality that is Rome, the Roman Empire and the Roman Republic, and all of that is to follow from this story. This is the mythological birthplace of Rome, which is relatively important in the Western world, I might say. Though this story is not very well spoken about, it's mostly cast aside as some kind of insignificant piece of work, though I believe it does go through cycles of being fashionable and unfashionable and so on and so forth. Though I will admit it's probably been long considered by many. It is one of the primary sources and the most poetic central theme which drove the narrative that gave birth to the modern world's hell, if that's an important theme to you. And while the word hell is simultaneously referred to as having Greek origins, it is also referred to as having Nordic, pagan origins, you might say. As being the land of the fallen heroes who drink all the time and so on and so forth. But I don't want to talk too much about Nordic stuff. I'll stick as much as I can to the centrality, but the poet Virgil went on to influence Dante. And Dante wrote a poem you might have heard too, called the Commedia. That is divine. The Divine Comedy. And in the first portion, Dante goes into the past, essentially, and sees all the fallen heroes and philosophers, those who came before Christianity, and then ends up in purgatory, and then continues on into heaven, and the wonderful realization that is Christianity, and so on and so forth. But the most famous act of that story was the first, being that it had much to draw from, and that is the realm of the poet Virgil. Now, casting all that stuff into hell is certainly a choice, and within the Christian framework, I suppose in some sense it works from a narrative perspective. Though it has a more vibrant and more alive and less dead underground, rotting and festering and being plagued by all manner of torture. I don't believe that is necessarily the resting place of those ideas, those narratives, those heroes, those gods and those goddesses. But I believe that because the story has a lot to say about things in general, still, and into the future. So does some of the other works that I've been reading, Ovid and his Metamorphosis, and a few of the other works that influence my thinking. But it is Virgil's, and in this narrative, the first 4 books are dedicated to preparing you for what is to happen in a situation when a woman who could be the pinnacle, the queen of the world, and rule it from on high, and have the depth of a background such as the fall of Troy behind all of her strength. And that woman is the woman who attempts to unite her queendom with a man from a fallen empire who is destined to create the new one. That hero, Aeneas, and his seed are destined from the beginning of the story, from the beginning of the narrative, to be the one that carries the past into the present and denies that woman, and then goes on and takes another, and in doing so creates that new empire. Does this story happen once? Does this story only ever happened once, and even then questionable because it's poetry and it's making a lot of grand sweeping gestures about the nature of the esoteric and fate and destiny and so on and so forth? Of course. But has that thing happened many times? Most definitely. Will it happen again? Most definitely. And in a grand sweeping esoteric way, which is not to be understood by those who even live through it? Absolutely. So maybe I believe. But I've been thinking about this woman because what are the reasons for her being rejected? And some of the reasons for her being rejected are that she seeks the pinnacle. She seeks to be the one at the top. And she would be granted this if she could seduce the man who is destined to bring her there. And what happens? The character is Dido, by the way, who came from a place called Tyre, way out east, just like Troy was before it fell for Aeneas. They literally have almost the same story. An empire fell, they took their remnants, and they went somewhere. And what's the word that's used? I changed it. I go back and forth. The word is translated in the text that I have as settlers, though you could equally use the word colonists. She took her fallen diaspora and went and colonized new land, and that land was Carthage, present-day Tunis, in Tunisia. And she's considered to be Phoenician, and they have a long history and are much associated with the color purple, which is a royal color. Anyhow, she's basically the matriarch of this burgeoning empire that is Carthage. But she realizes she can only take it so far. And right in front of her stands the hero, the man, who will allow her to take her abilities further, her potential, up into the stars, to create that new empire, what would be Rome. Well, this ain't it. Carthage ain't it. Dido ain't it. There's also parallels in the story of the relationship between Cleopatra and, well, perhaps Julius Caesar, perhaps Mark Antony. Doesn't really matter. It's much like that story of two guys on the road sharing a pair of shorts. Jeez. The shorts are the one that are getting ahead. The shorts are having a great old life. Get to see this house, get to see that one, get to bring people together. Might even say that's the function of shorts. Am I going to miss this rain? No way. Was that the worst of it? Maybe I shouldn't tempt fate, as they say. Now, I feel for her. I do. It's not that I want to cast her as an antagonistic figure, because what does she do when he gets the word that he should leave and carry on and go to the actual location of Rome and the actual conflict? Because what conquering is that? What conquering of a diaspora would it be to show up at the doorstep of a woman's empire, go into her bed, give her children, though maybe there was? I've heard that as a theory. It's not likely, but who knows? We're talking about poetry here. You can create any narrative you'd like out of it. You could create the narrative that she didn't kill herself. She actually had his child, and that child was meant to be the one that would mount the world, or whatever. And that's the real. And that child's descendant would go on to be the descendant of the Roman soldier Pantera, who had sex with that Jewish woman and gave birth to Jesus Christ, or like whatever. You could make those connections in a poetic way if you wished to attempt to tell that narrative. I don't know. But what really happened in the story we have is that he turns her down. Well, he hooks up with her in a cave first, which is significant for a number of reasons. But let's move past that. Because he gets word that she ain't it, Italy's it, go to Italy. There's actually someone you can go to war with there to prove that you're not worthless, to prove that you can hold a band together, you can make allies with locals and win the war against a local population to subjugate them and do what? Well, marry one of their women. Now this happens, and it makes me think about the most famous general to first set foot on these plains and how he came from the East. And like most do that come from the East, they have a certain esoteric vibrancy about them. A certain narcissism, a certain haughty, slim-framed, cold, even, sort of love. Because some sort of fate must be done. And that hero sometimes goes in and he wins a war against a local tribe. And he does so not on his own, but as a union with another local tribe. And perhaps even he has relations. And those relations go on to have relations. Yet something is born from that relation. And what is born goes on to have relations. And so on and so forth. And an empire is formed. Well, as I stare out onto these vast, open Montana valleys and think about the most famous general to first set foot on these plains, I think about who he was allied with, and I think about who he took relations with. Maybe he found a pair of shorts on the ground. And decided to step into them. Weird analogy, that one. Not sure it applies too well there, but I think you get my taken. Now, this is just a silly idea, but I have been tossing these two works back and forth. These Virgilian works and these Ovidian works. And they have a nice balance to them. It's almost as if the words spoken of the great esoteric man and the words spoken of the great esoteric woman. It's as if Jove commissioned an author to write an epic, and so did Juno, and we have each of those works. At least that's how it feels to me sometimes. Because in those works, they approach the topics which are difficult. You have the idea of empire, a very masculine idea. The idea of diminishing a certain high-ranking female along the way in favor of a more, I might even say, whimsical outcome. And then you have just that nature of change, which women are sometimes difficult to come to terms with. And often it is a comedy, and equally often it is a tragedy. But that change comes at a great cost, a great lesson is learned. And something beautiful usually grows out of it, although sometimes what grows out of it is a literal beast or monster or something that needs to be conquered and have its head cut off. And the thing that is beautiful that is created is sometimes a flower which needs watering and needs care and needs tendering and so on and so forth. But I thought I'd give it a little talk about those types of things because I feel for that woman who is at that pillar. And she's looking around trying to decide where that perfect descendant of the fall of a great empire is residing. And when he will end his long journey and arrive at her doorstep, because I have been this man many times to many women. And I have rejected her like Narcissus. And sometimes I feel for that echo. That woman, like the great Dido, who provided that haughty, slim figure with someone who reflected her inflections back on him, such so that he began to see himself and who he was. See, there's a parallel story there between the tragedy of Narcissus and the glory that is Aeneas. And that is, they're both waiting for fate to deliver them to the proper woman, to build the proper empire. And I am guilty of denying the Imperium of Carthage in favor for the Imperium of Rome. I think other people hold firm to the idea of Rome. I believe Catholics do, but they do in a specific Christian way. And I don't necessarily believe that I am within the same drum beats as they are. I'm an offbeat. I'd be saying that when the rain comes, it's usually in correspondence with the tears of the idea of a coming Aquarius, which is different than the present Piscean. Everybody turned into a fish, swimming in one direction or swimming in the other. And now a lot of them are finding that they're circling back and finding themselves in the same position they were in before. And then some of them are trying to swim in the opposite direction. And they're both just circling around. But the division is important. Because how would you know one thing from another if they weren't divided? There's lots of divisions these days. And this rain is getting to be a bit on the nose and the face. So I'll finish up by saying that I feel for those women. I'm sorry for them. And whatever's to come to me, I hope it does deliver, at least in my own heart, some sort of similarity to a greatness that was once achieved by Rome. And it wasn't all horrible. At the very least, it produced some wonderful aesthetics. And that is not my highest ideal, though it does seem to point you in a proper direction. That's not to say that women can't manipulate that as well when they find themselves in the position of Dido. So these raindrops are for her, as that story is meant to be, because these raindrops are meant to extinguish the fire that burns inside of that Dido, because that fire was so intense on the inside that she needed to feel it on the outside, and she cast herself onto the funeral pyre. And that was the end of her. That's a horrible end. If I ever denied a woman, certainly she felt some fire inside. But almost equally as certainly, she did not light herself on fire. Maybe if I was a greater man, she would. Just saying. Well, with that, I'll end it there and drive back and go get some food. And take in a nice evening with a nice sprinkle of rain and a good visage. So long, friends. To whoever might be listening, whoever might be watching. This one to Dido. And in her gate, all the true goddess was revealed. Arma virum que cono Troy que prima sapores Italium fato perfugus Lavini Veni Litora provided us with the story today. Et vera incessu patuit Dea.